Hey folks, so if you're part of the no-code community, then you are familiar with Bubble and most likely FlutterFlow. These are some of the most common tools that people use for building different type of applications, and that's what I wanted to cover. So if you have been following this channel, then you might have seen the Bubble videos that we talk about. But how about if we want to build some mobile applications? And that's where actually I came across FlutterFlow. Wanted to build a mobile app, which I'll talk about that later. So I thought of trying FlutterFlow. And to be honest, if you are familiar with Bubble, you should be fine with FlutterFlow. In this video, my goal is going to be for the Bubble developers to get an understanding or a glimpse of how building in FlutterFlow is. So if you decide to build something in FlutterFlow, then you can relate to how you used to build things in Bubble. So let's go through a few concepts. Number one, Canvas. So if you have worked with Bubble, this is an example app. In here, this is the design tab, and we have this canvas. We basically used to drag and drop things, and we used to say row or different types, and then there are certain way you can align these elements, and there are certain way you can assign some width and height. So that used to be in this canvas, and then there are some visual elements, then there are some containers, form elements, different things that you can see on the Bubble side that you might be familiar with. And also you have access to this top navbar where you have different pages that you can go to or build new pages. So now how do they look in FlutterFlow? So in FlutterFlow, when you make an app, so I started building an app. I said it's a simple app. I'm not taking a template. And this is how it looks like when you start making an app. It might just land you to a mobile screen. You can change the screen sizes how you would like the app to look like. So if it's a web app or mobile app, it doesn't matter. This is how you start. There are a few things happening on the left, and in here the default tab is going to be where you can add these elements. So in Bubble we saw that we have a list of these elements. In here there are these icons that you can pretty much drag and drop onto the canvas. Now again, my experience with FlutterFlow has been just a few weeks, so just a beginner experience. Just wanted to share what I thought was common things between Bubble and FlutterFlow. Now, if you would like to have a tree-like structure to see what's happening in this page, that's here in this tab, the second icon. And you can see that there are pages that we can navigate. So in here, you can add new pages and navigate to different pages. And then below that is the widget tree that we are familiar with in Bubble as well, where you can see the page and then everything that is contained in a page. Now in here, I can drag and drop any of the widgets from the widget palette. So in this column, maybe I can add some sort of text and it goes up there. Now, something that you'll notice is that in FlutterFlow, it's a bit more restrictive in terms of how you can drag and drop these things. So if you recall in Bubble, I can just pretty much drag and drop anything anywhere and then it will stick. But in FlutterFlow, what happens is you need everything to be in a certain format. And some of these you'll notice if I were to go to homepage and add something, there are some common used elements that you can utilize: column, row, container, and stacks. So I had to learn which ones are going to be accepted at the top level. So let's say if I were to add something here to the homepage, in addition to the column, it's going to tell me that there is certain way you have to do this. You have to basically wrap the column that is in there with the new added element. In this case is something you might notice a bit different than Bubble, but again, it's it's going to take probably a few different tries, and you'll see which ones are allowed, which ones are not. I'm sure there's quite some documentation if one were to follow which ones can be at the top level and which ones can wrap. So I can remove that widget, I can replace it, that column, with some sort of row or some other available widgets. Not just that, I can wrap it with something else. So there are a couple of options in there, and this is just a first glimpse of me trying FlutterFlow. So I'm sure there is quite some learning on how these things are structured. So that is adding to the canvas. This is the widget tree and also the pages. Now what you'll notice is on your right side here, this is a bit different to how we used to do things in Bubble. So in Bubble, we can click any of the elements and it brings up a menu like this. This is something we know. It has options for appearance, it has options for the layout, and then also the different conditions we can apply. If this is visible or not visible, or a certain way it could be visible, and any additional condition. Now in FlutterFlow, we'll notice that any of the widget that we click on, that has different options, and I'm going to start with the top level, the home page. Now here I notice that there are certain properties to the home page that might be a bit different than how it is going to be for a column, or if I am looking at the text that I have here. So that might be a bit different. Now it could be that you want to have some actions to things, right? So in here I can click. So let me just add a button here. And for this button, let's say I want to have an action. So this is where I can define. So if you recall, in Bubble, we can click and then we can add a workflow within this appearance tab. Whereas in FlutterFlow, we can add a workflow by clicking the button, and then we can, if I want to add some sort of condition, then I can go to this tab where there are actions and I can define an action. So this is going to be a little different than Bubble. And in here you can either add an action, be it navigate to certain page, or there are many different things allowed in the FlutterFlow app. Some of these are common to what we have done before. Some of these are a bit different that you might see in terms of how mobile apps are. So you probably have to go through some of these to understand what it does. Now, there is also something that you can do. So I can open a flow editor, and what happens here is that same action tab that we saw on the side, now this opens up and now I can define a complete workflow. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. Before that, just wanted to cover aspects of this canvas, how we can change things. There's also something in addition to canvas. If you have a few different pages, then you can see how one page flows to the other. So that is something. So I found this app on the template store, and then I just want to see how things flow. So it shows how your first screen takes to second, and from there how do you go to the third, and a few different things. So I believe this is something recently added, and it was quite nice to just visualize how the flow of actions happen. Now, second thing that I would like to talk about is workflows. Workflows is where we make the app do something for us. So if we want, we can make the button take us somewhere, or if we want, there are many things happening that we have seen how Bubble has structured. So in Bubble, you can see all of the workflows at one place, and you can click each of those and see what's happening. I can go to different pages, and in here I can see what are the different workflows. In FlutterFlow, each of the workflow item, if there is something that happens, then it's highlighted by this action icon, and if you click there, it takes you to the action that is associated with that particular button or any element that we have. And the actions or workflows in FlutterFlow are local to each of the widget. So if I'm clicking on the button, then it shows me on tap what can happen, and on double tap, on long press, this is specifically for a mobile app, we can have different type of actions that happen. Similar to how we had in Bubble, you can click and add an action, and there are certain different possibilities about the account to different places, some sort of data. Similarly, in here, we can perform navigation actions, database actions, and there are a bunch of pretty much whatever you'd like to do in Bubble, you can do here in FlutterFlow. It's just how the things are arranged are a bit different. Now, another thing that we'll notice is that if actions happen one after another, then we have a straight chain of things. If we add a condition saying, if this happens, true, then do something here. If it's false, then do something else. Now, this is going to look a bit different than how we did in Bubble. We used to just apply condition at the bottom over here and say only when something happens, do this step. If not, do another step, or just take them somewhere else. But in FlutterFlow, you basically define what happens with the condition. If it's true, then do a set of actions here, and if it's not, then you take them elsewhere. Now, third is data or databases and how we manage the data in different apps. So if you recall, in Bubble, we used to have this tab, which is data, and we define different types of data in here, which could be tables, and for those we have different columns, and we can visually see the data in the app data, which will show the different tables. Now, in FlutterFlow, what happens is that a lot of that is made open for the builders to use different data stores. So the default one, the easiest to configure probably and most integrated, is the Firebase. So if you start the app first time, it's going to say, do you want a Firebase database to be associated with this app or not? You can say yes, and it helps you. So there is this AI feature which automatically builds the database for you, and you can have different tables in there. You can store files and have some functions over there as well in Firebase. So it gives you that flexibility to use Firebase for many different aspects of the app. But then there's this option of adding different providers as well. So one could use Supabase. A lot of people are probably familiar with this. It's Firebase alternative. Better pricing in general. It could also be open source and deployed on your own server. You enable it here, add your API keys, and then get started from there. The usual way of adding tables and the schema, it's going to probably look a bit different. So what we do is we first create a collection name. I'm going to call this test table, and then this creates a table here, and then I can add some fields to it. So there are different type of templates. Let's just go with user. So if you recall, in Bubble, users was something created automatically for every app, and here now we can add in FlutterFlow a template that they provide. So email, name, photo, and all of these things. This, let's say, columns for the table. So we can change this, basically delete, add new ones. If we were to add new ones, then you'll notice there are different types of data that we can select from. Some of these are similar to Bubble, some are a bit different. So this image path, video path, audio paths are specific to given links that users might have in the app. So you could use that, or you could always use some sort of string. The list option, again, this is similar to Bubble. Now, one could also create additional tables, a sub collection. Every user that is part of this table, for example, can make an art. So for that, we can add a new collection, art, and say it's a sub collection of the test table, or we could have called this a user table. Every user can create an art, a sub collection of the main collection. This is a bit different than how we used to do things in Bubble. The good thing is all of the data is outside of the app. If you are running this with Firebase or Supabase, all of your data is outside. What FlutterFlow does is it provides you the UI, and then it also provides you the workflows or actions in this case. And if you like, there are ways you could also automate some of that and take it outside, like functions in Firebase. So that is a bit different. It took some time for me to basically get the schema right, get Firebase set up, and just start with how data is going to flow between the apps. They did make things easier recently with these automated ways of generating tables for you, but this was a bit of a learning. Whereas in Bubble, we know that it comes with some sort of a data store where we have data type, and as soon as we build this, we can save data. We don't have to go externally. So while talking about data, I also wanted to highlight the different state that is available in the app. You can have certain constants, saying that these constants are perhaps some drop-down values or some other selection options that you could use different places in your app. So these are how you can configure here. Certainly it's not a detailed video, I just wanted to highlight where things are and how things are a bit different. Now there are also app states, so if a user might have selected something, then we can say across the app what was selected by the user. Now in Bubble, we know those were a bit different. So let's say, for example, we had a certain selection of the PDF file here, then we could say that if the file was selected, then the state of this changes. We can define a state and we can say here, file uploaded. And this could be just a yes or no, and then we can say that that's how. So anytime the file is uploaded, then we can define that, change the state of this particular element, and then we can use that state somewhere else. So we see that all of that is defined for each of these elements. Then there could be something else if we want, could be at the page level. So we have some states at this level. And then if we want, we had some of the option sets available in the data tab that we could probably use as drop downs or something across the app. So that is a bit different here in FlutterFlow, where we define app state and constants in a particular tab. And if we have a condition or if we have certain state attached to each of the page, that is also an option. We can add that based on the selection of the page. We can add some page parameters. We can also add some local page state. So there are a couple of different ways. Again, don't want to go in details. Certainly we can make some additional videos about that. And this local state on this page is available for each of the pages. So if we have another page, then we can add some local page state variable. So as long as the user is on this page, those variables are available. Certainly we can pull any of the app state for any widget if we like as well, that is going to be with any of the actions, or it is available for any place pretty much where you can select a variable. Now next is plugins and templates. So we know in Bubble there is a section for plugins. There are hundreds of plugins that we can add. So not just that, there are also templates where you can search from one of these 1400 templates available that you can use for building your app. And while you're here, be sure to check out the Langsas template that I published not too long ago. There are quite a few users who are building apps using that. Langsas basically helps you build a chat with PDF app. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. So now going to FlutterFlow, the marketplace is similar to Bubble, where you can find quite a few different templates, although I did not find a lot of different options compared to Bubble, but I would say there are a decent number. And it could be template apps, which is basically a complete app that we see in templates in Bubble, or it could be that it is just a certain page or component, or there are some custom code added by people. So there are different options for the marketplace. And also, if you are in the app, now let's say if you'd like to add a plugin or a component here, you could browse and look at what's available. So if, for example, I say I want to add a page to my app, now there are something called flows in here, which was quite nice. I really like it. It has a complete flow of whatever you like for a certain task. So let's say you want account and profile creation. Now this can take user from account creation to creating profile and any steps needed in the user auth. In addition, you can see different type of flows available for maybe chat or notifications or even OpenAI Vision API, or something similar to ChatGPT type of template that you can utilize. I really like the flows, and it brings like multiple screens together for the app. You could also certainly add a component which is available in this marketplace, where it could be something for notification, or it could be a small widget that does a certain task. I really like it that I can just pretty much select this and it's available in my app. And then of course, if you like, you can just add a single page, and then you can add this page to your theme or some sort of default theme that's available. So this was about the pages and components. You can do similar in the widget tree as well. You can add your own custom widget if you like, if you had defined that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, or you could just use any of the widgets available. Now, another thing I wanted to highlight is in Bubble, we can add plugins. In FlutterFlow, what I really like is the custom code option, and there are different things that you can custom code here. There are certain functions you can assign, saying that maybe if user clicks a button, take them somewhere, or add certain step to it. So you can define your own code. What I really like is that if I want to create a new function, I can use ChatGPT and basically code it where I don't necessarily need to know this Flutter language that's used here, but I can just ask here. So some of the examples here, okay, check if this string is certain way, or if I want to add a file, do something with the file. So it was quite nice that I used this quite a bit, where I asked AI to build the function for me, then I was able to test it here, and when everything was fine, I can just copy that over to the main function code and run it. So that whole process was quite easy, and I mean, to be honest, I don't know how to code in Flutter, but then with the AI, I could code it and use it in my application. Same thing, not just function, you can build widgets, you can build different actions. Custom actions can be multiple things happening, and all of that you can just pretty much ask AI and it will build that for you. So let's say, for example, I would like to discard that and a new action. I can use Code Copilot here as well. So this was really nice. And then if there is something available from the community, of course you can use that. There's also a marketplace that you can look at for Dart functions that you could bring in. There's a huge community around that, where you can find a lot of different things that you might need for your app as well. So now this brings us to the conclusion. Which of these wins? To be honest, both of those, they have their own strengths. If you have an application which is going to be mobile first, I would suggest to go with FlutterFlow. It has some really nice features and it's very well integrated with different app stores, and the deployment is quite nice. Now, if you want to build just a web app, you might want to go with Bubble. It's a bit easier. Now, second thing is flows. As mentioned, there are these flows that you can bring in. So we looked at the auth flow, where you can bring in 6 or 7 screens with user authentication steps, and it takes care of all of that. That was quite nice and unique for FlutterFlow. In Bubble, you might use the component tab that they added recently, or maybe you have some sort of template that you have to copy and paste. In addition to that, there's the code export option. You can build the app and then pretty much export all of the code and ask help from a developer to do certain things, or in the long run, you don't have to be using FlutterFlow. You could export and then build elsewhere. So that's something nice in FlutterFlow. It's not available in Bubble. And then the flexibility to use a backend of your choice for storing data. That was quite nice. You can use Firebase or Supabase. This is something not available in Bubble inherently, but of course you can connect it to other platforms which can handle your backend workflows and also data. On the other hand, if you want simplicity with the data storage, then you might like Bubble because everything is in the app builder, but in FlutterFlow, that is something you'll have to configure outside. AI code generation was also quite nice. I can build pretty much any sort of widget or function. That was quite easy. In Bubble, I found it quite difficult to build a plugin of my own and then test it and make that available. Anything custom that you would like to do is quite easy in FlutterFlow. And then the rate of AI adoption within the FlutterFlow community, especially the team that's behind FlutterFlow, is quite nice. It seems like they keep adding new AI features and automate things, which was a bit slow in Bubble, to be honest. Now, on the other hand, as mentioned, if you're looking at building web app only, then you might want to go with Bubble. If you're already familiar with Bubble, then this makes it quite easy. Now, the other thing is community is quite strong in Bubble. I realized that I can pretty much find anything in the forum section, and there are solutions that people have done different ways. In FlutterFlow, I still had some trouble finding solutions, so I had to ask basically ChatGPT to write me some custom code for many different things. Templates are also quite nice in Bubble, where there are many different templates available. It's still something I believe FlutterFlow community is catching up with. And also plugins, there are many plugins available by the community and also by Bubble team, but not a lot yet in FlutterFlow, but I believe the custom code option can handle that. Again, the final conclusion I would say is that it depends on what type of app you're building. If you want to build something for mobile, then it's nice to learn FlutterFlow, and then you can build for mobile as well as for web. If you're just looking at web applications, then you can stick with what you have learned in Bubble, and that's pretty good. Thank you so much for watching. If you do decide to try FlutterFlow, feel free to use the referral code. It's not going to charge you any extra. It just gives me an extra month to help build more content with FlutterFlow and share it with you all. Thank you so much again for watching.